Alright, Shavuot, say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Beis. We have a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Beis. We left off on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis in the Mishnah. So let's actually pick up. Let's just pick up with the last case of the Mishnah, which was 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. Kibel dam b'kleish b'shtei kosos. So 111b, 7 lines up from the bottom. Kibel dam b'shtei kosos. If you received the blood of both, say sacrificial blood, in 2 different kosos, 2 different cups, and what did you do? V'nasan shnei b'fnei pater. If you applied both of them on the mizbeach on the inside of the Beis Hamikdash, so you're pater. So we'll say that's obvious. That's an obvious case. Shnei b'chutz. If you applied both of them outside, chayiv. You're chayiv for shchutei chutz. That's obvious as well. Echad b'fnim ve'echad b'chutz. We'll say what happens if you offered up one of them inside the Beis Hamikdash, one of them, and one of them inside, one of them outside, pater. Okay, because I will say now the order here is very important. Echad b'chutz ve'echad b'fnim chayiv ala chitzon v'apnim mechaper. We'll say if you offered one of them up outside, if you offered what's wrong?
Same case, right?
No, remember order here is very important. Order, look, meaning you mean the last two phrases. No, because remember, I'm sorry, that's my fault. Let me clarify. Echad b'fnim ve'echad b'chutz means the order here I will say is very important. You do the first cup inside, second cup outside, then pater. You haven't done anything wrong. Echad b'chutz ve'echad b'fnim, if you did the first cup outside, second cup inside, then what? Chayiv ala chitzon. I'm chayiv ultimately again for offering up the blood on the outside, but yet nevertheless, hapnimi mechaper. The blood I offer inside works in that it will create the effectiveness of the carbon. Lema davar doma. So to what can this be compared? Mafrish chatasa va'avda. This could be compared to the following case: a person was offering a chatos, he separated out his chatos and it got lost. V'frish acheres tachteha, and then he separated out another chatos. Va'achar kach nimtzeis harishona, and then Rabbi say then he finds the first. So he designated the first, lost the first, separated the second, found the second. Now what do you have in front of you right now? You've got 2 chatos offerings. Varishtehan omdos. So both say both of them are mamash standing in front of you now. Shachat shtehan b'fnim pater. If you offer them both inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're pater. Most say that pater in this context just means you haven't done anything wrong. You've offered up 2 karbanos. Shtehan b'chutz. If you offer both of them outside, then you are chayiv for shchutei chutz. Achas b'fnim va'achas b'chutz. So we'll say what happens if you offered one of them inside the Beis Hamikdash, one of them outside the Beis Hamikdash. Then what? Then achas b'fnim va'achas b'chutz pater. So we'll say remember again the order here is very important. If you offered up the first carbon inside, thereby discharging your obligation, then the second carbon outside, so that second one is not even a carbon at all, and therefore you are pater. Achas b'chutz va'achas b'fnim. If however you offered up the first one outside and the second one inside, then what's ta'alacha? Chayiv ala chitzona. So you chayiv ultimately again for shchutei chutz, for shechting the first carbon outside. Va'pnimis mechaperes. But ultimately again, the inner one still goes ahead and affects kapara. Kishem shedama potras besara. We'll say the same way that the blood application goes ahead and exempts the basar. Now from what? Rashi points out, from me'ilah. We'll say the moment you do zrika, then the meat of the carbon is no longer subject to me'ilah. Remember again, me'ilah means inappropriate, mundane use of consecrated property. So the moment that you go ahead and you do zrika, there is no longer any type of me'ilah liability on the meat. Kachi poteres es basar chaverta. So we'll say, now the Mishnah is just introducing me to a new halacha, which is that once you go ahead and you do the zrika of one of the bloods, right, of one of the karbanos, that exempts both of the karbanos from the liability for me'ilah. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Kishem shedama poter b'sara mina me'ilah. The zrikas dam otzias basar kadshe kadasha mina me'ilah. So once you go ahead, in general, when you offer up a karban, so once you do zrika, ultimately again there is no me'ilah. So therefore the Gemara says, Deibo shaselakan kachi poteres es basar chaverta afa pi shepsula v'ashachat shtehem bifnim koi. Vashmoina dehecha demunach bakosos v'kadam mezarek as dama achas poteres es chaverta mina me'ilah mishum chata shecham. So let's listen to this. So just in a simple case, the Gemara is saying is as follows: if I'm offering up 2 karbanos, and therefore I have 2 cups of blood, so the moment I do the blood application for one of now this is talking about a case where I'll say like this case in the Mishnah, where I had separated a chatas got lost, separated a second animal, and I'm going to be offering them both up. I shechted them both. I was makabel dam of both of them. I have 2 cups of blood. Once I do zrika from one of those cups, we'll say, what does that do? It essentially removes the me'ilah prohibition from both of those karbanos. That's the novelty. Good. We'll say top of Kuf Yud Beis. Here we go. Bishlama b'chutz v'chazra v'nasam b'fnim shekula roilias b'fnim. Supposed to listen to this. The Gemara now is going back to the first case in the Mishnah. So the first case in the Mishnah, we'll say, was not with 2 cups, but it was with 1 cup. Remember again, so what was the case? The case is where I shechted the chatas, I received the blood in a cup, in a kli sharis. And then what did I do? I went ahead and I did a first did. So there are 2 cases here. I went ahead and nasam b'chutz v'chazra v'nasam b'fnim, or b'fnim v'chazra v'nasam b'chutz chayiv. So I'll say if I go ahead and I placed the blood, I sprinkled it outside and then went back and sprinkled it inside, or I sprinkled it inside and then went back and sprinkled it outside. So the Mishnah says I'm chayiv. See, in that case, it was like 1 cup. The order of inside, outside doesn't seem to matter. The Gemara says, either way, I'm chayiv for zrika b'chutz. Why? So the Mishnah said, shekula roi b'fnim. Because I was like, that's 1 blood, and all of that blood should be sprinkled on the inside. So says the Gemara, so I understand in a case where I first sprinkle the blood outside, and then go back and sprinkle it inside. Shekulo roi lios bifnim. Because I will say that blood should have been sprinkled on the inside. So if I started by sprinkling it on the outside, I understand why I'll be chayiv. But watch this. Aval bifnim vehelan b'chutz. But I will say, if I shechted the chatos, I was makabel the dam inside the kos. I sprinkled the blood inside the Beis Hamikdash, and then I went out and I sprinkled the blood outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Then why should I be chayiv? After all, again, I will say, what is that blood called? What is that blood called? That's called shirayim. That's leftover blood. And I will say, once I do zrika of blood inside the Beis Hamikdash, there's no din that you have to sprinkle all of the blood. You have to sprinkle some of the blood. Once you've sprinkled some of the blood, whatever the shear is, I'm done. Once I'm done, the rest of the blood ultimately again is shirayim. If it's shirayim, then what does it matter what I do with it? So if I take it outside and then I sprinkle it, why should I be chayiv? To which the Gemara says, Hamani Rabbi Nechemihi. Well, Rabbi Nechemihi has been very popular in our last couple of blot, as you could see. This is like the 3rd time we're mentioning him already in the course of 2 days. So who's doing this reflect? Rabbi Nechemiah. What does Rabbi Nechemiah say? The Amar Shiari Hadam Shekrivan B'chutz Chayiv. We'll say Rabbi Nechemiah is of the opinion that the halacha is that you must pour shirayim by the yesod. What we said in yesterday's daf, shirayim ma'akvim. The Rabbi Nechemiah holds that after you do the sprinkling on the mizbeach, the leftover blood has to be poured out by the base, and that is part of the blood avoda. Failure to do so compromises the carbon. So the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Nechemiah that shirayim ma'akvim, and therefore we'll say shirayim ma'akvim. Therefore what? Therefore halacha lemaisa. If I go ahead and I take the blood out after I sprinkle it, and I then go ahead and sprinkle it outside, I am chayer for that. To which the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, if it's Rabbi Nechemiah, Ema Sefer, look at the end of the Mishnah. What was the end of the Mishnah? Kibel dama b'shnei kosos. If you went ahead and you received the blood in 2 cups, nasan shnehem bifnim pater. So I'll say if you sprinkled both of them inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're pater. Now I'll say that again, that's always an obvious case. I'm not doing anything wrong there. Shnehem b'chutz chayiv. If I sprinkle both of them outside, then I'm going to be chayiv. Why am I going to be chayiv? I'll say shchutei chutz, or I should say zrika b'chutz. Echad. Now watch this. Echad bifnim ve'echad b'chutz. Now, this was Alan's point before. If I do one of them on the inside and one of them on the outside, putter. I will say, now, why am I putter in that case? Presumably, why am I putter? Why? Because I first did the zrika bifnim and then did the zrika b'chutz. So the assumption is, once I did some zrika bifnim, then what? We're done. We're done. So any subsequent sprinkling of blood is effectively irrelevant. But if it's Rabbi Nechemiah, V'amar Rabbi Nechemiah, Shiari Hadam Shekrivan B'chutz Chayiv. But we'll say, but you just told me that the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Nechemiah. What does Rabbi Nechemiah hold? Shiari Hadam, right? Shirayim Me'akvim. That all of the blood, some of the blood is sprinkled, and whatever is not sprinkled has to be poured out by the yesod, by the base of the mizbeach. If that's the case, then I don't understand. Even in a case of echad bifnim ve'echad b'chutz, right? Even in the case of also where I'm sprinkling first inside and then outside, if the Mishnah indeed reflects the view of Rabbi Nechemya, I should be chayiv for that as well. To which the Gemara says, so the Shita Mekubetzes changes the gears over here a little bit. So the Gemara says, chayiv, so Amri man tana, if you look at the Shita Mekubetzes, it's on the right hand side, right by the little letter base. Man tana de palig alei Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, kos ose chavero dichui Rabbi Nechemyahi. Ultimately, into which the Gemara says that what's happening over here. So the Gemara says, well, first, seif and asal tana come to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon. Damar kos ose dichui lechavero. So the Shita changes it around a little bit. He says, who is the Tana who argues on Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon? That kos osa chavero dichui is Rabbi Nechemya. I will say, now interesting enough, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is something different, which is the concept of dichui. We'll say what dichui means is, specifically in the case of the 2 cups of blood, once you offer up one of them, so the other one effectively just becomes invalid. Not invalid puzzle. Dichui just means it's like set aside as if what? As if it's non-existent. So Rabbi Nechemya will say, in addition to being of the opinion that halacha l'maisa shir hadam ma'akvim, what Rabbi Nechemya does hold in this case of 2 kosos is that once you offer up, once you do the zrika from 1 cup of blood, then what? The other cup is nidche. Nidche in this context, meaning totally set aside for non-use. Good. So once it, let's go back to the Madar. Remember again, the Mishnah said in the case of shtei kosos. So we'll say, remember we had an interesting halach with the case of shtei kosos. I shecht 2 karbanos. I go ahead and I get 2 cups of blood. So we'll say, so what do? I go ahead and I should say differently. I shecht 2 karbanos. I shecht 1 karban, but I just received 2 cups of blood. So remember again, what did the Mishnah say? If I go ahead and I sprinkle, I take the first one, I sprinkle it outside, do zrika outside, and take the second one and do zrika inside. So we'll say, what's the halacha in that case? I'm chayiv for zrika b'chutz. But yet, interestingly enough, what's the halacha? I am yotze my karban, because I did do a zrika inside. So even though I did a zrika outside, I'm going to be chayiv for that. But I did a zrika inside, so therefore again it will be mechuper. Ultimately again I will achieve kapara. So the Gemara compared that to the case of the person who goes ahead and separates a chatos. Chatos gets lost. He goes in and separates out another chatos. After that, finds the first chatos. So we'll say, so again, what's the halacha? So the halacha is that if you were to go ahead and even offer one of them up outside, the one that is offered up inside still affects kapara. So he's comparing that to the case of the 2 cups of blood. So says the Gemara. So by the way, just so you should know, this halach of the 2 cups of blood is actually a very fascinating one. Because remember, this is 2 cups of blood from the same carbon. The novelty over here is that even though I'm taking that first cup and I'm doing zrika b'chutz, I will be chayiv for that act of zrika b'chutz. When I subsequently take that second cup, which has not left the Beis HaMikdash, and then again did zrika on the inside, so ultimately again I will create the effectiveness of the carbon. So as I mentioned yesterday, you have this unique anomaly that in 1 carbon you will be chayiv for zrika b'chutz, yet halacha l'maisa you will fulfill your carbonic obligation through the zrika on the inside as well. Quite a fascinating case. Says the Gemara, I don't understand, why do I need this comparison at the end of the Mishnah? In other words, why do I need this lemahad davar domer? What does that do for me? So the Gemara says, Hamani Rebbehi. So I'll tell you, it reflects the view of Rebbe. What does Rebbe hold? The Amar, Avuda b'shas hafrasha mesa. See, I will say, because Rebbe holds that ultimately, again, if a carbon is lost, in other words, if the carbon is lost, avuda b'shas hafrasha, if the other carbon is lost at the time when the second one is designated, then mesa, then ultimately again it is left to die. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Hamani Rebbe Hida Amar b'Maseches Temura avuda b'shas hafrasha mesa kechata shekipru ba'aleha. So we'll say Rebbe holds that if the original carbon was lost at the time that the second one was designated, it is left to die, because he holds that it's the same thing as a chatas that was separated, then ultimately again was lost. Another chatas was separated out, designated out. was offered up. Kapara was achieved. The other one is left to die. So Rashi just goes on to Savudu Mishas B'Shas Hafrasha Mesa Vachi Kamar. This is what it means to say Taima Da'avda. The reason ultimately, again, this case is true is because the original carbon was lost. Ha Hifrish Chatos. We'll say, but let's say a person went ahead and did the following. I have to bring a chatos. So I'm a generally nervous person. So what do? I separate out two animals. Right? I lose stuff all the time, right, including livestock. So what do? I go ahead and I separate out two chatos la'achrayis. And I will say now again. So my intention is obviously I'm only going to offer up one chatos, but what I'm doing is I'm separating out the chatos, and I'm also designating a second animal in case the first animal gets lost. So we'll say, what's the halacha? So, hifrish shtei chatos la'achrayis. Says the Gemara, Chadminayo me kara olihi. Now we'll say, now the reality is in that kind of case. So my intention is never to offer them both up as a chatos. My intention is to offer up one as a chatos, and what is the second one going to be? Second one is going to be an olah. Now that designation devolves upon those two karbanos from the beginning. Ukid Rav Huna Amarav, Dam Rav Huna Amarav, Asham Shenitak Laraya, Vishachto Stam Kasha the Ola. As it also reflects the view of Rav Huna, name of Rav, who says that if you have an Asham that ultimately again was set out to pasture, we'll say B'Pashtos because it wasn't going to be offered up as an Asham for a variety of different reasons, and you ended up shechting it stam. In other words, you shechted it for a carbon without any specific purpose, so kasha the ola. So the halacha is ultimately, again, it is kasha for the ola. So we'll say, Twitch the Gemara says, Midami, I don't understand how you compare the two cases. Hasam, Asham, Zachar, Va'ola Zachar. We'll say, in that case, ultimately, again, it works, because if you shecht an Asham stam, it could be an ola. Why? Because both of those karbanos come from male animals. Aval chatos nekevahi. But I will say chatos comes from a female animal. Amar Abchia. So I will say, therefore, how can you say that stam will be offered up as an ola? Amar Abchia miyustinia. Rashi says Yustinia is a place, is a makom. B'seir nasi. We're talking about ultimately again the seir of the nasi, Rabosai, which ultimately was an akeva as well. And Rashi says it was a female animal. Rashi says Bisar Nasi Shehifrish Shnayim La'achrayis Dasam Zakrahu. Ultimately, again, he separated out two of them. Sorry, it's a male animal. He separated out two as achrayis, and both are male animals. Therefore, again, I'll say what is not offered up as the chatas of the nasi will be offered up ultimately again as the olah. Good. Hadrin Allah chashochet v'amala. I'll say mazel tov. Mazel tov. New parak. I'll say this is now. I want to tell you this is actually very exciting. This is going to be a full daf mishnah. This is the longest mishnah I've ever seen in my short Talmudic career. Right? So I'll say, so listen to this. This is Mamish, the mother mishnah. But it's great. You're going to get a little bit of halacha, a little bit of history. It's Mamish one-stop shopping. So here we go. Paras chatesh asarfa chutz migita. We'll say, get ready. So we have a paraduma. Paraduma. Now, right, so just still karbanos. So I don't want to get your hopes up too high, right? Still Zevachim. I'm just kidding. Baruch Hashem, what I meant to say is Baruch Hashem, it's still karbanos. So paras chata shesarfa chutz migita. So here we go. Paraduma. Transitioning a little bit now from, in all seriousness, from karbanos to non-carbonic sacrificial items. Now I know that sounds like an inherent contradiction, but we know that it's not. There's a whole variety of things which we're going to discuss in this Mishnah, which are sacrificial in nature, but they're not sacrificed on a mizbeach. For example, paraduma. The Gemara calls it paraschatos. Paraschatos is paraduma. Shesarfa chutz migita. That was offered up. That was literally burned. Chutz migita. This is actually very interesting. If you look at Tosas for just a moment. So Rashi says gita is lashon gat kilomar makom amok. That's Rashi. A makom amok. A deep spot. Now, what does that mean? Look at Tosas for just a moment. So Tosas says something very interesting. Skip to the end of Tosas. He says, you see the second line there, middle of the second line, Ve'ikr gat niskan l'sreifa, shu ke'in guma ke'deperish ba'aruch, v'sarfin oso sham v'oso nafar. So we'll say, apparently, what they used to do for the paraduma is as follows. They would make this thing called the gat. A gat was a guma, a pit. So essentially, what they would do for paraduma is they would make a fire pit. So in other words, you didn't burn paraduma at ground level, but rather, again, they dug out the area. And they would burn the paraduma inside the gat. Now, when you think about this, it's very logical. Why is it logical? Right? Because you don't want the ashes to blow away. is actually incredible. So meaning, I will say, can you imagine you burn the paraduma and you turn your back for a second, there's a nice northerly breeze, right? And suddenly again, your ashes are your paraduma all over harazesim, right? Which is not exactly very effective use of paraduma. So the dafka would dig this gut, they would dig this pit, burn the par inside the gut so as to be able to collect the ashes. So therefore the Mishnah says, if you burn it chutz migita, if you burn it outside of the gut, then we're going to see it's possible. Similarly, we'll say if you took the sir mishlech, and we'll say sir mishlech is the goat that is pushed off the cliff. If you went ahead and instead of pushing it off the cliff, you shechted it, you offered it up as a carbon, then ultimately again we'll say potter. Now we'll say now what it means potter is you're potter for shchutei chutz. In other words, there's no, if you shechted the paraduma, for argument's sake, right, outside of the gat, or you shechted the sir mishlech, you're not chayiv for shechting sacrificial animals outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Why not? Shne'emar vel pesach ol moed lo heviu. Because we'll say the pasuk says for shchutei chutz that what are you chayiv for? You're chayiv for not bringing it to the entrance of the Beis Hamikdash. Kol shein roi lava al pesach ol moed in chayav lo. So we'll say any sacrificial item which is never sacrificed inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're not chayiv for sacrificing it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Sir mishtaleach that you shechted, paraduma that you burned outside of the gat, as much as you've done something illegal. In other words, it's not correct what you did, but you're not chayiv for shchutei chutz, because there's no din of shchutei chutz except for those things which are normally offered up inside the Beis Hamikdash. Harova, v'hanirva, so we'll say an animal that sodomized a human being, or that was sodomized a human being, v'muktzah, or an animal set aside for avodah zarah, v'anevat, or an animal used for avodah zarah, worshipped for avodah zarah, v'hamechir, an animal that was exchanged for a dog, va'esnan, or an animal that was used as payment for a harlot's services, va'kilayim, a mixed breed animal, trefa, which is an animal that is going to imminently die as a result of its condition, the yotzei dofen, or yotzei will say is an animal born cesarean, right? Shekrivan bachutz, and you took any of these animals, you offered them up, you offered them up as a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash, potter. We'll say potter. Why am I potter? You know this. Why am I potter? Because these animals are not fit for sacrificial use inside the Beis Hamikdash. If you're not, so the common denominator is, if you're not fit for sacrificial use inside the Beis Hamikdash, you can't be chayiv for shchutei chutz shene'emar lifnei mishkan Hashem kol she'in roi lava lifnei mishkan Hashem ein chayavin alav. Anything that is not fit to be offered up inside the Mishkan Hashem, we'll say you will not be chayiv for its sacrifice outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Ba'ali mumin. Similarly, if you have a blemished animal, Bain Ba'ali Mumin Kavuin, whether I will say it's a fixed blemish or I should say a permanent blemish, Bain Amud Beis, go up 112b, Bain Ba'ali Mumin Overin, or I will say maybe we're talking about Ba'ali Mumin Overin. Ba'ali Mumin Over means, let's say the animal will say has a mum, but it's what we call a mum over. A mum over means what? A temporary blemish. In other words, it'll pass, Shekrivan Bachutz, and you offer them up outside potter. We'll say you are potter. Now again, what's the logic here? Because again, such an animal cannot be offered up inside the Beis Hamikdash. If it can't be offered up inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're not chayiv for offering it up outside the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Shimon says he makes a distinction. Bali mumin kavuin, potter. Bali mumin overin chayiv below sase. Well, this is actually very interesting. Rabbi Shimon says you are potter if you offer up an animal that has a mum kavu, a permanent blemish, but if you offer up an animal with a mum over, so ultimately again you are violate a lo sase. And I will say that's very important. We're going to discuss what lo sase there is in the Gemara. But I will say, but what aren't you chayiv? Now remember, normally the punishment for shchutei chutz is kares. So you see over here that even Rabbi Shimon will say, I will say this is going to be Rabbi Shimon b'shitaso. You're going to see Rabbi Shimon holds that animals that even if they're not currently sacrificable outside of the Beis Hamikdash, if they will become sacrificially fit, he holds you chayiv for shchutei chutz. Therefore, in a case of mum over, which is a case of a mum which presently disqualifies the animal, but wait a little bit and the animal will become fit, Rabbi Shimon holds your chayiv for shechting it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, not the chayiv kares, but you will be in violation of a lo saseh. We'll discuss this in the Gemara. Torim shelo higiu bnei zmanon. So we'll say if you have turtle doves that are not yet old enough to be sacrificed, to be used in sacrificial service, or ubnei yona shavar zmanon, or we'll say doves that became too old to be used for sacrificial service, shekrivan bachutz, and you offer them outside the Beis Hamikdash, potter. You're potter. Why? Why? Because you're not fit for use on the inside. Again, we're going to discuss Why exactly do I need so many examples of the same klal? Or as I will say, it's the same principle, which is if the animal is fit for use inside the Beis Hamikdash, then what? You are chayiv ultimately for sacrificing it outside. The corollary to that is, if the animal is not fit for use inside the Beis Hamikdash, I'm not chayiv for shechting it outside. But it's just interesting to see. Reb Shimon Omer, Bnei Yonah shavar zmanon, potter. Shimon agrees that if you have Bnei Yonah that are too old, they aged out, and therefore cannot be offered up on the Mizbeach, if you offer them up outside the Beis Hamikdash, they will be potter. However, the Torim Shalegia Zmanon below Sasi. Both say again, like this is Rabbi Shimon the Shitaso. If you have turtle doves that are too young and you offer them up outside the Beis Hamikdash, although you will not be chayiv kares, you are in violation of a lav. Because once again, Rabbi Shimon the Shitaso always holds that if the animal can become or will become sacrificially fit, then you are chayiv at least to some degree for shchutei chutz. Oh, so vespino. Also, listen to this. Let's say you shecht a mother and its child outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Umechusr zman. We'll say mechusr zman refers to the halacha that, remember, an animal must be a minimum of 8 days old in order to be offered up outside in the Beis Hamikdash. So let's say you went ahead and you shechted a mother and its child, which you're not allowed to do, or you went ahead and you shechted an animal less than 8 days old. Pater. So we'll say again, same idea. These are animals that would not be fit for sacrificial service inside the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, if you offered them up outside, you're going to be pater. Reb Shimon says, Harei below saseh. So Reb Shimon says, going to say same thing, because these animals ultimately again could be fit. They could be fit, or there's no inherent psul with the mother and this child. You just shouldn't offer them up at the same time. But if you distance them, it would be fit. Mechusar zman. Just wait a couple of days, the animal is going to be fit. Therefore, you're chayiv. Here's Rav Shimon. Kol shurai lavo la'achar zman harei zeh below saseh. Rav Shimon says any animal which will ultimately again become fit for sacrificial service after the passage of time, if you offer it up essentially prematurely outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you are chayiv ultimately again for a lo saseh ve'ein bo kares, but you're not chayiv kares. The Chachamim say kol she'ein bo kares ein bo lo saseh. Ultimately, the Chacham will say no. Everything is bunched together. If you're not chayiv kares, then what? There is no liability at all. Mechusar zman. So we'll say, listen to this interesting case. Mechusar zman means the animal is time deficient. Now, what does it mean, time deficient? Bein b'gufo. So we'll say, bein b'gufo can mean, for example, the animal is less than 8 days old, right? As we saw before. Bein beba'alav. Or we'll say, by the way, mechusar zman could also mean something else. You bring a karban pesach on Tu B'Shvat. Right? It's beautiful. So some people get very wrapped up in Tu B'Shvat, like mamish. I really hisorus. So what happens? I'm so overtaken by Tu B'Shvat. I want to bring my karban pesach. So I'll say. So again, that's called mechusar zman. In other words, wrong time. Wrong time. The karban itself, up karban pesach Tu B'Shvat is meaningless. So or less than 8 days old. So we'll say or bein bebalav. And we'll say mechusar zman with the owners is an interesting idea over here, which is what? So we'll say that would be a case ultimately again of where, for example. Actually, let's just see it. We'll say, what's the example of mechusar zman, right, with the bailim? We'll say, now, mechusar zman literally means wrong timing. What's the case of where a karban is brought with the wrong timing for its owner? For example, hazav, v'hazava, v'hayoledes, v'hametzora, shekrivu chatasam v'ashemam b'chutz. So we'll say, let's say in all of these examples, and we'll discuss them, hazav, zava, yoledes, this woman gives birth, metzora. We'll say all of these people have to bring karbanos as part of the process of their what we'll call it purification. And we'll say if they bring the karban too early, that's called mechusar zman. That's called mechusar zman. In other words, right karban, wrong time. So let's say the zav goes ahead and let's say a guy is a zav. He needs 7 days of tara. He brings the karban on day number 2. Okay, the karban is meaningless. Again, so it'll count as an ola, whatever else, but it's meaningless term. It's called mechusar zman. So we'll say, let's say he offers up that karban outside of the Beis Hamikdash. What's the halacha? He is pater for shchutei chutz. Olos sein ushlamen b'chutz chayven. However, again, if any of these people bring their olos and their shlamen b'chutz, then ultimately, again, they will be chayiv. In other words, if they bring the karbanos which are necessary for their atonement or for their purification prematurely, and they do that outside, that karban is meaningless, therefore they're pater. If they bring their olos and their shlamim outside, then ultimately again they will be chayiv. Hama'ala mibasar chatas mibasar ashne mibasar kachik adashim mibasar kachim kalim. Who most so will say, if a person goes ahead and offers up from the meat from the basar of his kachei kadoshim, right? And Rashi gives examples of all of these things, of his kachei kadoshim, or of his kachim kalim, umoser haomer, or the leftover of the korban omer, ushte halechem, or abosai the 2 loaves, which is the offering on Shavuos, velechem aponim, or the lechem aponim, ushiare minachos, or the leftover of a mincha, hayotzek. So what's a yotzek means? A person goes out and pours the oil on the mincha offering. Va'poses. So we'll say poses refers to certain minachos after they were broken up into pieces. V'habolel. So we'll say ultimately again, Rashi says over here, bola means you mix together. You mix together the shem and the oil with the solus, with the fine flour. V'hamoleach, or one salts a carbon. V'hamenif, or one waves a carbon. V'hamagish, but say magish usually refers to bringing the mincha to the southwest corner of the mizbeach. V'hamesader es hashulchan, or you arrange the shulchan. I will say, now this must be talking about a case over here of where a guy literally brings the shulchan outside of the Beis Hamikdash. He means business about his shchutei chutz. Right? See, mamish, he's bringing the utensils. He brings the shulchan outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and he arranges the loaves on the shulchan. V'ameitiv es haneros, or he brings the menorah outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and literally goes ahead and arranges the oil. Right, literally cleans out, and arranges the oil on the wicks. V'hakometz, or he does kamitza. V'amekabel damim b'chutz, or he receives blood, does kabbalah outside. We'll say in all of these cases, pater. Now we're going to go through this list of avodos in the Gemara, but here is an extensive list of all of the things which, if you did them outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you will be pater. So again, we will discuss each of these items in themselves as to why they're pater. Ve'ein chayavin. I will say now, there's a couple of common factors for this list. Number one, if you did any of these items outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you will be pater. Number two, ve'ein chayavin alav lo mishum zara. So we'll say furthermore again, if a non-Kohen did any of these items, he will not be chayiv. He will not be chayiv misa. V'lo mishum tuma. If either a non-Kohen or a Kohen did any of these things in a state of tuma, they will not be chayiv. V'lo mishum mechosar begadim. If you did any of these sacrificial items of Osai without wearing the proper Kohanic vestments, you will not be chayiv. V'lo mishum richos yadayim v'raglayim. And if you fail to wash your hands and feet prior to doing any of these avodos, you also will not be chayiv. So we'll say this exhaustive list we see these items share a number of common denominators. Number one, if you did any of them outside of the Beis Hamikdash, you will not be chayiv. Number two, if a non-Kohen did it, you won't be chayiv. If he did it b'tumah, won't be chayiv. Did it without big day kuna, won't be chayiv. Did it without washing hands and feet, won't be chayiv. Good. So we'll say those are the halachas. Now we come to the history part of the Mishnah. Ad shelo hukam Mishnah. We'll say this is really fascinating. Ad shelo hukam Mishkan. Hayu habamos mutaros va'avoda bebechoros. So we'll say, up until the Beis Hamikdash, ultimately the Mishkan was established, bamos were permitted, and avoda was done by the firstborn. So we'll say in the desert, right? Before ultimately again the Mishkan was ever erected, so people are permitted to make their own bamos, private altars, and avoda was done through the bechoros, through the firstborn. Mishuka Mishkan, once the Mishkan was established, ne'esru habamos, so the bamos became aser, va'avoda bekohanim. So we'll say once the Beis Hamikdash was established in the desert, so private altars ultimately again become aser, and the avoda is no longer done by the bechorim, but rather it's done by the kohanim. Kodshei kadoshim, when there was a Mishkan, kodshei kadoshim ne'achalef in makalayim. So we'll say kodshei kadoshim had to be eaten within the curtains of the Mishkan. The kodshim kalim b'chol machane Yisrael. But ultimately, kachim kalim could be eaten anywhere within the camp. Bola Gilgal, but so when it came to Gilgal, so remember again, Gilgal was the first stop when we entered over the Yarden, right? We conquered Yericho. Gilgal is right next to Yericho. That was the first place where the Mishkan was erected when we entered into Eretz Yisrael. It remained there for 14 years, 7 years of kibush, 7 years of conquering the land, 7 years of dividing the land. So when the Mishkan was in Gilgal, Hutru habamos, so we'll say once again, bamos were permitted. Kodshei kadoshim ne'echalim lifnim akalayim. So kodshei kadoshim had to be eaten inside of the curtains of the base of the Mishkan. The kodshim kalim b'chol makam. And ultimately, and kodshim kalim were eaten anywhere you wanted, which makes sense. Because remember, if bamos are permitted, that means I could offer up karbonos in my backyard. If I could offer up karbonos in my backyard, I could eat kodshim kalim wherever I want. Bo the Shiloh, right? Once we came to Shiloh, so we'll say, so again, what happens in Shiloh? And remember again, in Shiloh, the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan stood for 369 years. 369 years the Mishkan is in Shiloh. So Nas Rabbah, so we'll say all bamos become Aser. In other words, you can't offer up on private altars anymore. So we'll say now the Gemara says, but why the Mishkan in Shiloh, even though it's still there for 369 years, it's actually quite interesting. There was no permanent roof on the Mishkan of Shiloh. Ella base avonim bilvad milamatan. We'll say, but what did it have? It had stone walls. So we'll say, in fact, if you go to Shiloh today, Mamish, the foundation is still there. The foundation of the Mishkan is still there. So what happened? So ultimately, again, it had a stone structure on the bottom. So milamatan, v'hayirios milamatan, and it had about say certainly like a curtain roof. In other words, it had a cloth roof. They had hung curtains over it to make the roof. V'yahaisa menucha, and I will say this is the place that the Torah refers to as menucha. We'll discuss what that means. Kodshei kadoshim ne'achal lefnim makalayim. So ultimately, again, kodshei kadoshim were eaten inside of the curtains. V'kodshim kalim u'maiser sheni b'chal haroah. I will say this is amazing. So kodshim kalim and maiser sheni could be eaten anywhere, ultimately, again, that could see the Mishkan. So we'll say, if you ever go to Shiloh, so you'll see something amazing, which is that the Mishkan is situated in a valley. So all around where the Mishkan was were hills. And I will say, the amazing part is, to this day, in those hills, what do they find? They find pottery shards. Why? Because what used to happen, people would come to go ahead and eat their karbanos, eat their kachim kalim, in sight of the Mishkan. What did they use to eat? Or the earthenware. The problem with earthenware, I will say, is that what? It cannot be kashered. Once it absorbs sacrificial absorptions, you can't do anything with it. So you're not taking home your pottery utensils. What are they doing? They would break it right there in the hills, and they would leave it there. So to this very day, you could find the pottery shards in the hills of Shiloh, overlooking the Makom HaMishkan. Bo the Nov, we'll say V'Givon. Ultimately, again, when the Mishkan was then moved to Nov and to Givon, Hutru HaBamos. Ultimately, again, once again, Bamos become permitted. And I will say, this is talking about after Shiloh was destroyed. When was Shiloh destroyed? This was after the fateful war with the Plishtim, when the two sons of Eli HaKohen are killed in battle. The Aron was taken captive. The Aron was taken by the Plishtim. So Rashi points out over here, it's actually Rashi on both sides of the page here. There's Rashi on the left-hand side, Bolano v'Givon, Kishecharva Shiloh v'Nilkach Aron b'mei Eli, Bolano v'Givon, Kimoshamar ein lechem chol. So we'll say, so they come after the destruction of Shiloh, after the war with the Plishtim, Aron is taken captive, Eli's sons are killed, Eli dies when he hears about the news of his two sons being killed. So the Mishkan is moved to Nov and Givon. Hutra Bamos. Once again, Bamos become permitted. Kachei Kadashim Ne'achal Lefnim Makalayim. So Kachei Kadashim will say, are eaten inside of the curtains of the Mishkan. Kachim Kalim B'chol Ari Yisrael. Kachim Kalim are eaten anywhere and everywhere. Bo Yerushalayim. When ultimately we came to Yerushalayim, we'll say Beis HaMikdash. When we come to Yerushalayim, then what? Ne'esru HaBamos. Then ultimately, again, Bamos become prohibited. V'lo says this is Beis HaMikdash. V'lo haya lahen. So I say actually the gears here has changed a little bit. V'lo haya lahen od heter. This is actually a very important change. V'lo haya lahen od heter means what? Once the Beis HaMikdash is built, then what? There is never again permission for personal Bamos. Which I will say is another way of saying Kidsha Rishona, Kidsha L'Shaita, the Kidsha La'asid Lavo. That ultimately, again, once the Harabayis, once the Beis HaMikdash is sanctified, that becomes the place for centralized service, and no longer are Bamos ever, or never again are Bamos ever permitted. V'yaisa Nachala. And this is what the Torah refers to as Nachala. We'll discuss what that means as well. Kachei Kadashim Ne'achal Lefnim Makalayim. So we'll say in this case, Kachei Kadashim are eaten inside of the curtains. Kachim Kalu Ma'aser Sheni Lifnim Menachoma. And ultimately, again, Kachim Kalu Ma'aser Sheni have to be eaten within the walls of Yerushalayim. Kachim Shekrivan B'Shas Isra Bamos. Was actually an interesting case. Any kachim which were offered up at the time when Bamos were aser, Vekrivan B'Shas Isra Bamos Mibachutz, Hare Elu Ba'aseh V'lo Saseh, V'chayavan Alav Kareh. So we'll say this is the paradigmatic case of Shchutei Chutz. Any karbanos which were sanctified and offered up at the time when Bamos were aser. At a time, so we'll say whether that's Shiloh or that's Beis HaMikdash, you go ahead and you offer up karbanos outside. You are chayiv, we'll say, for what? You are in violation of an aseh, a los aseh, and kares. It's a pretty bad day for you, right? Right? An aseh, a los aseh, and kares. So we'll say next. But however, hekdishon b'shas heter, we'll say actually b'shas heter, it's actually an interesting case. What happens if we'll say if it's a time when bamos are permitted? Gilgal, right? Gilgal, or Nov and Givon, where bamos are permitted. So I was makdish a carbon at the time when it was permitted to do so. Ve'krivin b'shas isser bamos. We'll say, but what happens? I'm a procrastinator. So what happens? I separated out the animal when bamos were permitted, and then before I had a chance to go ahead and offer up the carbon, bamos become prohibited. Beis Hamikdash is built. They move the Mishkan to Shiloh, whatever it is. So we'll say, what's talacha? And now I go ahead and I offer it up at a time where there's an Isser Bamos. So elu ba'aseh v'lo saseh ve'in chayav l'alein kar. So we'll say, in this case, I'm in violation of an aseh and a lo saseh. We'll discuss what the aseh and lo saseh is, but here's the important part, which is what? I'm not chayav karis. Why am I not chayav karis? So we'll say, I'm not chayav karis because I sanctified the animal when it was permitted. So we're going to see the chayav karis for shchutei chutz only comes about if sanctification offering occurred at a time of Isser Bamos. But if the sanctification occurred at the time when Bamos were Asr, as much as I procrastinated and I went ahead and I offered it up, I waited to offer it up, I will not be Chayiv Karis. Hikdishon Bishas Isser HaBamos, if I go ahead about saying what? I offer it up at a time, I sanctified it at the time when the Bamos were Asr, Ve'krivan Bishas Heter Bamos, or also this is a reverse case. When I sanctified it, Bamos were Asr. When I offered it, Bamos were Mutter. So what's the halakha in this case? So we'll say in this case I'm in violation of an asay, not in violation of a los asay, and obviously if I'm not in violation of the los asay, I'm certainly what? Not chayiv karis. Ve'ilu kachim krevim mishkan. We'll say, and here is the list of karbanos which can only be offered up inside of a mishkan. We'll say this is true even in a situation where there's a heter bamos. Even historically, when there were times when bamos were permitted, there were always certain karbanos that had to exclusively be offered up inside the Mishkan. What is the list? Kachim shul Mishkan. So first of all, karbanos themselves that were pledged to the Mishkan. Karbanos sibor, so communal offerings. Karavin b'Mishkan. Ultimately, they're going to have to be offered up in the Mishkan. The karbanos hayachad b'bama. Individual karbanos can be offered up in a bama. So I would say the general distinction is anything communal has to be offered up inside the Mishkan. Anything private, b'shas heter bamos, can be offered up in a bama. Karbanos hayachad shuk tishul Mishkan, yakrivu b'Mishkan. Individual karbanos which were pledged to the Mishkan should be offered up in the Mishkan. Ve'mikrivan b'bama pater. But if you went ahead and you offered up on a bama, you're pater, because we'll say at the end of the day it's still a personal offering. Uma bein bamas yachid lebamas tzibor. We'll say, what is the difference between something offered up on a private bama and something offered up on a communal bama? In other words, we'll say, sacrificially, what's the distinction when offering something up on my own personal altar versus offering something up on the communal altar? I'll tell you, says the Gemara, smicha. So we'll say smicha, which is the leaning of the animal, was only done inside the Mishkan or on a communal bama, was never done on a personal bama. Shchitas safon, the obligation for certain karbanos, which we'll discuss, to go ahead and shecht in the north, was a din ultimately again by Bama Sibor, not by Bama Yachid. Top of Kuf Yud Gimel. Matan u'matan soviv, or soviv. Well, as I said, is actually the concept of applying the blood on all four corners, which is not really all four corners, but rather again on two that look like four. We'll discuss that in the Gemara. That's a din by Bama Sibor, not a din by Bama Yachid. Utenufa v'hagasha, waving and bringing close. Ultimately, again, Rashi says that this is menachos. Not everybody agrees that it's menachos, as we'll see. These were dinim by Bamas Sibor, not by Bamas Yachid. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein mincha b'bama. Rabbi Yehuda holds that there is no din of mincha. Menachos were not offered up by a bama. V'kihun u'bigdei shares u'kli shares. So we'll say furthermore, again, the need for a kohen only applied by Bamas Sibor, not by Bamas Yachid. Similarly, bigdei shares, kohanic clothing, only a din by Bamas Sibor, not a din by Bamas Yachid. So ultimately, reach nichoach. We'll say, so reach nichoach, I should say this differently. Kihun, bigdei shares, kli shares. We'll say, so again, the need for a kohen, and we're going to discuss this in greater depth. Right, the need for a kohen, the need for klei shares, right? A klei shares, we'll say, means a service utensil. Reach nichoach. We'll say reach nichoach is interesting. Reach nichoach means that when you offer up a carbon, you cannot pre-roast it prior to going in and putting it on the mizbeach. It has to roast on the mizbeach so that the pleasing aroma comes up from the mizbeach. Mechitza l'damim. We'll say mechitza l'damim means a line to demarcate which blood is put above, which blood is put below. Richos dayim raglaim, the obligation to wash one's hands and feet. So we'll say all of these are halachos which apply to the bamas tzibor, not to the bamas yachid. Good, all of these are distinctions. Aval, Hazman, Vahanosar, Vahatame, but Rabbi say, having in mind to go ahead and eat the carbon at the wrong time. Nosar, leaving over the carbon past the permitted window. Tame, offering up the carbon in a state of Tuma. Shavin, Bazeh, Ubazeh. Ultimately, Rabbi say will be the same, but this halachos will be the same both for Abba Mas Yachid as well as Abba Mas Sibor. I will say we'll stop over here for today. I'll record the Parshat Atem Yetz Hashem after davening and I'll post it. Shkoyach.